So if you wouldn't mind closing your eyes, putting one hand on your chest and one hand on that beautiful womb space. Take a deep breath in, even longer out. Deep breath in and breathe tenderly. Hold yourself tenderly. As you've been journeying, you just take your rest. And as you release your hands, bring them back to your lap. A little stretch if you need to stretch, and roll your shoulders if you need to roll them. Another big exhale. So thank you for what you've come into this space with. Thank you for all that you are, why you're here, when you're here, who your allegiances are, the children that you're calling into your experience, the children that are running into your experience. You know, there's no accident. And because it's such a big role that we have, finding that peace and that power, it's a long journey. And it has a lot of challenge in it, but I think it does because the challenge helps us grow. I think we grow into a being that is able to hold another being and hear another being. I think that takes a lot. I think that takes, where have we been? What have we experienced? Who are we listening to? What have we heard? What do we embody and what do we let go? I think we have to be doing so much of that before we welcome that little person into our beings and create a home for them on the inside and then create a home for them on the outside. So whenever talking about our ability to birth, which is kind of a big crescendo where you go and you literally fetch that whole child. So you've got your child's body in here, but there's soul work to do. And so you feel pressed whilst you're doing it. You know, people say, why do you accept the term labor? Because it's work. Get squeezed, squeeze tears out of you, squeeze ecstasy out of you, joy out of you, anger out of you. Experience all of these emotions, and then the ultimate ecstasy is when you're holding your child in your arms. So yeah, we go places to get to that place. So I always start, you know, it goes back further, but I always start with how we're born, and we soldier on. You know, we just, you know, dye our hair, have girlfriends, have boyfriends, fall out, you know, change job, work out, have mood swings, change the way we eat. All of that is happening whilst at the same time there's this yearning inside of us. Most of us, not all, but there's this yearning in most of us for seeds to be planted for us to grow a person. We just see, and we're always looking, well, I won't speak for everyone, but for sure, once I was fertile, I couldn't help but be looking to find out who's suitable. You know, I would find myself daydreaming about raising children with somebody. It's not everyone's experience, but I know it's many of our experience. It's a drive that comes from inside of us. If we meet somebody we really, really like, we try and imagine them in a parenting situation. Like, what are they going to be like as parents? Sometimes it's just straightforward lust, but sometimes it becomes bigger than that. We start to dream. But by the time we start those dreams, we've usually experienced insults to our sexuality. Really physical ones, sometimes really emotional ones. Sometimes those insults come from the people we love most daily in the world, our parents. And it could be because of the way they came onto this planet, into this world. So I know some of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be challenging, but I just need you to understand that the person that you become when your amygdala starts to ping off when you're pregnant, you've got a part of your brain that makes you more anxious, more concerned. You have to really, for you to have a comfortable ride in childbirth right now, it works best if you started to explore where you're coming from, how you were born, etc., before you welcome another person into you. And I know we don't all choose that, and I certainly didn't choose that. But what it did mean is that my pregnancy, birthing journey, infant nurture journey, relationships with the parent, the co-parent, all of that was way more challenging because I was discovering myself in massive ways whilst I was pregnant, giving birth, and then breastfeeding, and then making decisions for my children as they age. I'm only now coming into my full power. So what our society does at the moment, and honestly, I do believe ultimately we win. I do. We do. We do. Even if we end up raising our children in chaos, provided we're really able to stand and take stock of what's happened, we do win. Our children win. Honestly, it's a love story with a great ending. And that love story is with ourselves. Yeah, we find out who we really are. It's quite a ride. So I just want to take us methodically through it. So we're born and we each have our different birth stories, and they do impact the way we live, who we trust, our food choices, where we're comfortable, our career choices. It does impact the whole thing. So exploration of our early years, it doesn't get avoided. it just might get squeezed out of you when you're looking at your own small children. But we have our birthing experiences, being born, and then we start to unpick ourselves. We're like an onion, start to peel off layers. Not comfortable, but we do it in the end. And then we start to encounter other people's views of our sexuality. Sit with your legs closed. Don't climb that tree. You've got to look pretty for when your uncle comes round. All of those things that we're very well aware of. Oh, your hair's cut too short. I mean, I like my hair long, but there's a judgment about the way we cut our hair, what we put on our faces, what's under our arms. Do we have hair there? Do we have hairy legs? There's this constant narrative about how we show up. We're totally unaware of the fact that we have this magnificence inside of us. We already have eggs. In fact, we had our eggs when we were inside of our mothers, which I'm sure you may have covered earlier. But we have our eggs already, right? Yes, they're inside a follicle that needs to mature, but they're already there. They're already living within us and lived within our mothers. But we're unaware that we're carrying them around. So we spring around, we fall off bikes, do handstands. We're doing all sorts of things, carrying the future inside of us. Such a miracle that we are. Such a miracle that we are. And then hormones start to form and we become aware of them, because we might get, when we're having our moon cycles, some of us may experience discomfort, or we see evidence of who we are outside of ourselves. By that time, our encounters with the opposite sex, the same sex and everything, myriad ways that presents, all of it that you can love and accept about yourselves, all of it judged by others. So you can imagine, people want to challenge the age that you decide to manifest your ability to carry a child. Everyone's got feelings about that. Are you too old? Are you too young? Are you ready? And it's just judged by age. It's not judged by what did you experience as a child? What was your birth story like? So we're already walking along with acquired baggage. Whilst we're carrying those eggs, whilst we start to experience our moon cycle and not be told anything about it, so it's kind of a voyage of discovery itself, that magnificence that you are is treated as something like a dirty secret, but in actual fact, that's you starting to show your magnificence. That's you starting to bud. Yeah. And then your body changes, and the society wants you to be ashamed of it, but actually you want to flaunt it. Like, look at these new things on my chest. Look at my vulva is starting to change. Some of us are even solid enough to get a mirror and have a look. And we notice that we've got moisture coming from there. We've got discharge. And we see somebody fancy and then suddenly our knickers are wet. All of these aspects of us that are just, whoa, magnificent. We are magnificent, what we're able to do before we even think about conception. Look what we do. We shed that womb lining. We shed it once a month during our cycle. Then we build it up again. Imagine that. We're doing that month after month after month. And somehow we replenish ourselves enough to be able to carry a child to term and then let that child go. We have an endometrium that's so juicy and red. It just accepts that blastocyst, that bundle of cells, just accepts it, sucks it in. We are magnificent. Gets me excited when I talk about it. It gets me excited. And the reason why I'm excited is because we are queens, creators on the earth, just quietly going about shopping, even if it's online, having a little dance, taking a few pills, and then we manage to replenish ourselves, be healthy and carry a child, drinking too much, sobbing a bit too hard over our exes, getting drunk and corning them, all of these things that we can do and then still be ripe and ready when it's time to receive that new person. We are incredible. We're able to grow our hair, grow our nails. We're able to hold a friend as she sobs. We're able to have compassion. We have this estrogen. So when I was talking about the hormones that come into play when we become fertile, one of them is estrogen. And boy, does it make us trust the wrong people. Doesn't it make us just too compassionate? But we survive all of that. We survive all of that. Yeah, when we get our little insults, our micro insults and macro insults when we're out and about because of our bodies And because of our hormones, they're kind of talked down to because we're hormonal. Like, my hormones mean that I'm ready to accept another human and grow that human. My hormones are not a bad thing. You know, me being hormonal, me being loving, is the best thing to have ever happened to our planet. Yeah, we can just flex, we can pivot so easily and with such warm breasts and warm open arms. How many times have you had someone just come, they're feeling a bit, I don't know, it could be the energies or whatever, it's making them rankle, and then they come and they settle on our breasts. They settle there, they can smell, and they go to sleep. How many people have you welcomed into your embrace? And then, you know, amazing us, you know, later in the story, we then use these same breasts to keep another human alive. We're magnificent. We're magnificent. I'm sure you know about what our vaginas do. They maintain a flora that keeps them healthy. There's just so much about us. So much about us. You know, there's something that Maya Angelou says when she said, there's a part of her poem where she dances as if she has diamonds at the meeting of her thighs. We should all be dancing like that. We should all be dancing like that, you know? There's so much to celebrate about who we are. And I think we're beginning to get the clue now that as much as we receive attacks, the aspects of us that receive attacks, those are the parts of us that are most magnificent. And the power in us is so, so strong. They kind of have to keep us down. You know, but use it to exercise with. Use it like pull-up bars. So yeah, okay, yeah, I'm being attacked for this. I'm going to shine in this. I'm going to shine. So you can imagine that when we're thinking about fertility, that seems to be one of the things that is under most attack right now. And it's been long. So it's been long, slow process, what we eat, what's sprayed into the air, what we're drinking, the psychology of our fertility. You know, sadly, sometimes we're creating children and they're not making it. Decisions are being made to let that pregnancy go. There's a lot around our power to bring humans into the planet that has been under attack. The way our society views pregnancy, our society is an inconvenience, an illness, all of that will undermine you and the power that you are. So my ideas, when Chloe and I first met at that amazing retreat, amazing camp, one of my ideas was to spend a little more time talking to you all about your adaptations for pregnancy and birth. And I think if you knew the entirety of that story, you pat yourself on the back even more, and you deliberately welcome that new soul into your belly and say, yeah, I've got this. You won't be so susceptible to the ways in which you're being undermined. Yeah. Of course, everyone needs help. And sometimes I need an inhaler because I get allergies to what's in the air. So as soon as February hits and the trees start to mutate, sometimes I need an inhaler. But it doesn't mean that I need to be on a respirator or a ventilator. Yeah. Sometimes you need a bit of help. Sometimes people need a bit of help to conceive. But once they've conceived, they run with that pregnancy and that birth and the breastfeeding and everything else. So when I'm talking about childbirth, I'm not excluding any kind of help that might be needed to become a child bearer, because we're living in a society now where people don't often meet face to face. There are stressors. There are men that are also receiving attacks to their fertility too. So the role that assisted conception plays is a welcome one for some of us. But it doesn't mean you don't throw babies out with the bathwater, in inverted commas. There's no way receiving assistance for conception has a reflection on your ability to carry your baby and birth your baby. And, you know, these are the questions that I often have to answer. And these are the answers, they're not always forthcoming from the established midwives and obstetricians you may meet. So that's why I talk about this often, because I want you to understand how amazing you are and how you can adapt to situations. So I've talked a bit about the kind of thoughts that people can be having when they're preparing to have their children. Now I want to talk about the process of conception. So I'm talking about conception when the baby is conceived within you, and the only way that the conception happens is by the introduction of sperm. It doesn't always have to be the man present with his sperm to introduce that to your uterus and let go off and find the egg in your uterine tubes. It can be introduced in other ways. So there are, you know, same-sex couples that are having children, and so the conception happens a different way. So all I would like to say is that in the usual amount of ejaculate, there would be around 30 million sperm. Can you imagine? And then we've got mucus in our vaginas that kind of, it's either a bit acidic or a bit alkaline. And so there are some sperm that don't manage that environment. And so they start to get whittled down. There's some sperm that get lost in our beautiful mucus around our cervix. Some of them get lost there. If they enter our uteri, then they get there, then half go off to one uterine tube and the other half go off to the other uterine tube. So the uterine tube with the egg in it is where the sperm are gonna strike gold, and the uterine tube without the egg in it, those sperm won't make it either. This is a miracle that's happening in your body if you're conceiving spontaneously, like the fun way. So then you've got half that find the egg, and when they find the egg, they're all coming at the egg because just one of them gets to fertilize the egg. So we're down to just a few thousand sperm by then, just down to a few thousand, and then they surround the egg, and then there's just one that burrows in faster than any other sperm. And when that burrows in faster than any other sperm, as soon as it's in and it releases its DNA material, then the whole egg forms like an eggshell and no other sperm can get in. That's the miracle that happens at conception. That's the miracle. When it forms, it instantaneously forms that shell, and then the material from the sperm and the material from the egg start to form pairs. And once they form pairs, then the whole cell starts to divide, and it looks like a raspberry in like 24 hours. All of that happens inside of you, facilitated by you. Your environment does that. Your environment does that. You release an egg from your ovaries. They alternate. They alternate every month. You do that. And then your brain starts to produce hormones to support the blastocyst. Yeah, so the hormones at first were supporting ovulation. Then your egg gets wafted along your uterine tube from the ovary, and on its journey meets the sperm, fertilized, and then the blastocyst continues getting wafted along your uterine tube into the body of your uterus. And then tumbles down into your uterus and finds a nice soft bed in your endometrium that's all new from your moon cycle. So it's there to nourish and grow that baby. So you've got all those hormones happening. You've got that blastocyst, tumble, implants into your uterus, nice soft bed. Then all of the cells start being assigned. So it's automatic. And you've got some cells that become amniotic sac. You've got some cells that become amniotic fluid. You've got some cells that implant into the uterine wall, the implantation site, and they become placenta. You've got some cells that become cord. You've got some cells that become the vessels inside of the cord. Let's go on. Then you've got some cells that become fingernails, toenails, eyelashes, stomach, heart, lungs, brain. You do that. That's what you grow. And there's no window on your uterus. So it's happening, totally happening with your hormones, sending messages, keeping the uterine lining healthy, keeping that pregnancy going. Your body responds to it. Sometimes you feel sick. Yeah, when you have pregnancy sickness, your body starts to tell you, your breasts tell you. Yeah, because all these hormones enter the circulation. Suddenly you're saying, oh, my breasts are sore. Oh, my nipples are really sore. Oh, my nipples are darkening. What's that coming out of my nipples? So this is just your breast adaptations. Why are they so tender? Oh, it's your milk ducts. They're growing, they're proliferating. Oxytocin makes them swell, makes them pump. So you suddenly got swollen breasts. All of these things are happening inside of you. It's spectacular. It's spectacular. And nobody's helping it. You're doing it. You're doing it. So that leads on to why. Why do you have pica is called? So that's like certain food cravings. Why am I having certain food cravings? Why am I wanting to eat all the pasta? These are hormones that are affecting your choosing. Why is that smoke? Why does that cigarette smoke smell so awful? Why can't I have red wine anymore? You start asking yourself all of these questions, but you can't even answer them. You just find yourself going with the flow that is being set up by your hormones, and now also the thoughts and feelings of your child, because they are a person. You have a person inside of you. It's like taking a seed and planting it. So you take a tiny, tiny tomato seed, tiny, and you plant it, and suddenly you've got this whole bush with tomatoes ripening at different times and all sorts going on from one tiny seed. And that's what you've just done. You've taken 2 cells and are growing a human from something that was not even visible to the naked eye. And that's what you're doing. And as you're growing that person inside of your uterus is growing to accommodate them. Or should I say, just to be perfectly clear, it's stretching. It's being stretched by the human inside. Imagine that. You had a structure that you're more or less unaware of, except for when you're menstruating. And now you're growing a whole human in there. And where you couldn't feel it before, except the sensations of menstruation, which is literally contractions, that's what you're feeling when you're menstruating. You then have this person inside of you that you're stretching their environment with their bottom and their legs and their movements and their arms and their head and the water around them. They're stretching your uterus open, and your uterus can accommodate it. Think now, when I'm talking about your baby having stretched your uterus open, when you look at all of those pregnant bellies now that take over most of their abdomen, most of their torso, starts off as a pair, ends up sometimes with 2 children in there, sometimes with 3. That's what you're capable of. That's what you can do. That's what you do. That's one of your adaptations. Another thing that you do, so you're keeping your baby growing, your baby's being nourished. Your baby has the audacity to move almost all of your internal organs as they grow. So your digestive system doesn't stay where it is, your bowel, your colon doesn't stay where it is, your bladder gets squished, your liver has to move out of the way, your pancreas, your kidneys have to move backwards. All of that's happening to accommodate a new human. Can you imagine? When it impacts the lungs, what do? You just find a different way to breathe in your 3rd trimester. You can do that. What about when you've got that baby inside of you, pushing all your internal organs out of the way, so your digestive system doesn't work quite as well? You can accommodate that. You accommodate that. You manage to not only eliminate your own toxins, but you eliminate the toxins of your baby in your wee and in your poo. You can do that. You do that. You've got a whole human inside of you, but I haven't told you the best bit. Oh, look at that. That little boy's gorgeous. We're talking about you, what you did inside of your mama. So you have, so like her son there, totally different human to you, totally foreign to your whole system, totally foreign to your immune system. So they're not already taking up physical space, they're moving their toxins through you. So it's eliminated via the umbilical cord to the placenta, crosses over to the maternal side of the placenta, into the maternal bloodstream, and you've got to sort it out. Doing that constantly because they're eating constantly. They're constantly bringing blood over from the maternal side of the placenta, diffuses through to their side, goes into their blood vessels, into the baby. So they're constantly eating and constantly excreting. That's what we accommodate. That's what we accommodate. And imagine we still manage to bloom. Many of us seem to bloom in our 2nd trimester onwards with all of that going on. All of your internal organs pushed out of the way. You're still managing to pee just about. You're still managing to poo just about. And you're managing to look absolutely stunning. Queen. That's what we're capable of. That's what we're capable of. Yeah. What is Ina May Gaskin said? She said, if a woman doesn't look like a goddess when she's given birth, we're not treating her right. That's what she said. These are the things that I want you to remember. Not, oh yeah, you know, you're really sick and then you crawl into a hospital and lie on your back with your legs in the air and have a baby. You are a goddess. You are a goddess. Times when I would say, you need to roar, I am a goddess, worship me. As you sail around, okay, you've seen her, Rihanna. She's a goddess, right? And she knows it. I don't think she had her belly covered for her entire pregnancy. She had her belly out. I'm a goddess, worship me, do it. Because you're bringing another human into the world. And if we stop doing it, it's a wrap. It's a wrap for the universe. I know that they're trying to develop an artificial womb, a glass one. I think they've worked on a glass one, and then they've got like a leather one or a sheep's uterus or something they want to grow our children in. They haven't perfected that yet. Okay. Keep roaring. They're never going to be able to pull it off the way we do, the way we can grow a child in our sleep. We can grow a child while skating, breakdancing, horse riding, climbing. We can grow babies whilst we're doing all of that. So badass. We need to understand who we are. That's why we're under attack, because we're so flipping amazing at what we do. We can sail along with cankles, you know, all sorts. We can cope, we can manage, and then we just squat and get our babies out. We're magnificent. We're magnificent. We can eat coal for our entire pregnancies and birth a healthy human because of what we're able to do, what passes the placenta and what doesn't. I ate chalk for like half my pregnancy, and I still produced two magnificent humans. They're 31 and 29. And you see that seed that you grew, and you grow them, we grow them inside of us, and then when they're born, like my son, 6'4", 6'3", we grew them, and then we took them to our breast, and then we patched them up when they were broken, and then we held them after their first breakup, and then we packed them off to university and all these other things. We do it. Us. Our children thrive because of us. And it's from the absolute get-go. So when I ask you to look after yourselves, it's for the long haul, because you still have 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds that really benefit from their mothers. Yeah. My sons are magnificent. They've got their own girlfriends, they've got homes, but they still need their mum. They still check in. This is what we're capable of, and I just really want us to walk tall and proud because of that. So your body whole time is holding the baby in, and I explained some of the adaptations to staying pregnant. Okay, so the hormones that you are excreting, the immune system, one of them triggers the immune system to be suppressed. So that means rather than your immune system, like you've not heard me sneeze tonight because I've had my lemon water, but often I'm sneezing because my immune system's saying, oh, that pollen, you need to get that out of your nose, sneeze. Imagine you've got a whole human growing inside of you. You do know that that body is constantly doing circuits and saying, what's that? Oh yeah, okay, she's pregnant. What's that? Okay, she's pregnant. It's constantly doing it, doing a circuit check all the time. Oh, we need to get rid of that. Oh no, she's pregnant. Oh, we should be getting rid of, no, she's pregnant. That's what your body's doing for all of those months, just doing a circuit check. That's why if a baby's ill, very ill, you might find spontaneous labor occurring before you expect it. Or if a woman's very ill, you might find spontaneous labor happening before we'd expect, because the body's doing a circuit check and it's saying, gosh, she's ill. What's that? Oh, okay, yeah, she's pregnant. She's very ill though. What's that? And then at some point, if she hasn't had help to recover, then the body will want to reject the baby. Yeah, even though she's immunosuppressed, it's going to say, I need to save the mother. So when we carry our children, every day that we carry them, we know that's another day gone by when our body's done a circuit check several thousand times and found in favor of you staying pregnant today and tomorrow and then next week and then next month. Your body does that. Your body does it. There's no doctor in the world that can keep you pregnant once your body's decided time to go. You're powerful. You're powerful. So your immune system is adapted. Your lung capacity, you breathe differently as your lungs get more constricted because your baby's growing and forcing your diaphragm upwards. You can cope with that. You're not fainting all over the floor. You're not. Sometimes women do faint if they're dehydrated, the blood pressure gets a bit too low. That can usually be affected by hydration, or if a woman's poorly. But all the women that I've seen that fainted, they were just thirsty, hot and thirsty. Okay, so you can maintain your health by watching what you eat, making sure that what you drink is hydrating you. Because if you're drinking Diet Cokes every time you get the urge, it's not hydrating you. Yeah, you need to look at what you're hydrating with. Is it clean? Then you have to look at, what am I eating? Is it clean? Is it nourishing me? Yeah, so your food choices make a big difference to how your pregnancy goes as well. So I'm often recommending books like Real Food for Pregnancy, etc. Why? Because you're a flipping queen. You need real food. You need good food. Organic food. Your body absorbs the nutrients from organic food better than it does what we sometimes have, which passes as food, but it really isn't. So you're going to help. Also, as we know, we are whole humans. So it's not just about what we're eating and drinking, it's about what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what we're mulling over, what's being said to us. We are goddesses. Guard your entry points. Guard these. Guard this. Yeah, you have to be that way. Why? Because you're carrying another human. Am I being repetitive? You're carrying another human. We owe you keeping your entry points clear and clean. Those of us around you, those of us that love you. So if we're going to open our mouths to you, we better make sure it's accurate and edifying. So it takes us a bit into what we're accepting in being called care, maternity care. So be careful. Who's speaking to you? What are they saying? Why are they saying it? Where's the evidence? Why would you say that? What presumptions are you making about me? And remember, you're goddesses. Goddesses, empresses, queens. We don't allow people to speak to us any and anyhow. We need to be vigilant. And sometimes when we're pregnant, we become way less vigilant than we are when we're not pregnant, because we become fearful and we just let things in. So taking me just a bit of a step back, do you remember when I was saying that there's some things that we need to practice before we're pregnant? And we need to advise our loved ones, our friends, our sisters to do the same. We need to learn how to be vigilant, caring of ourselves, mothering ourselves. We need to learn how to do that, because it makes our pregnancies and our child rearing easier if we can do that, rather than learning on the hoof. Yeah. So other adaptations that we make, like you notice our hair grows. So our hair grows a lot and our nails grow a lot and our skin darkens. It's because we're responding to a growth hormone. So the growth hormone is not only affecting our children, it's also affecting us. And we can accommodate that. We can accommodate that. Sometimes we lose our hair again, but often, like when our feet grow, our feet expand. So it kind of helps us to carry more weight. So some of us go up a shoe size with every pregnancy, just to help us carry more weight. Our uteri, if we carry the first child, it's quite firm, it's quite turgid. You need to have a lot of movement and growth to stretch it open. But by the second baby or the third baby, our uterus kind of go, oh yeah, it's in there, done that. They're very lax. So a lot of people will say, goodness, you know, the size of my abdomen at 14 weeks was the same as when I was 20 weeks with my first child. Yeah, the uterus kind of goes, yeah, I've done that. Cells remember, and they just acquiesce. They acquiesce more. We have blood flow that boosts. For some, I say double, for some it triples. So we have a certain amount of blood in our bodies, and then when we become pregnant, blood plasma boosts. So it's not necessarily the red blood cells in your blood, the bit that makes it red, it's the plasma. It's what holds everything together. It's kind of a yellowish color. That is what boosts. So we've got that happening to enable us to have enough blood to feed us, but also to feed the uterus with our child in it. We're capable of doing that. We do that. Our blood vessels acquiesce, they become softer. We've got a hormone that does that called progesterone. They become softer and floppier. Like, no one has to tell us to do that. We do it. We do it. So when you've got these blood vessels that are a bit floppier, carrying more blood, it helps us to maintain a blood pressure that can keep us upright. It helps us to grow a human, and it helps our skin to thrive. So you even find us with amazing blooming skin in the second and third trimester as well. So we are capable of all of these things. And yet this is not being shared with us from childhood. This is not being shared with us when they're talking about sex education. Our amazing ability to adapt is not mentioned there. And we all know these things. We all know these things. You've got a vulva that becomes juicier and stretches. It becomes quite boggy with fluid. Why? Because it needs to stretch around a head as the baby's head emerges. So we need that skin there, juicy and acquiesced, to stretch around the human as the little human comes. Which is why, you know, sadly, if there's genital mutilation that's taken place, or labiaplasty, where they're changing the way your lips look, your vulval lips look, you know, often for vanity, then it will affect the way the baby's born, because all that loose skin isn't there anymore. So sometimes it means that we will tear more when we're having children. Our vulva is there for a reason. They're just not spare bits. We don't want it to look like a 6-year-old's. Yeah, it's meant to be there, juicy, for a reason. And it becomes juicier as you become more pregnant. One time I got a phone call whilst I was teaching. No, sorry, a picture whilst I was teaching. One of the women I was looking after, and she took a picture of her vulva and she said, "What the fuck is this?" She didn't recognize it. She didn't recognize it. You know, we are so magnificent, the way we adapt. So magnificent. Even the feeling of our children inside of us, it starts to feel like butterflies at first. And you go, have I got wind? What's happening? I can feel movement. And then we just grow used to this whole human having their own life and patterns inside of us. They have a sleep in waking adaptation that they have. So 45 minutes of sleep, 45 minutes awake. When they're awake, they're moving inside of their own amniotic fluid, and their own amniotic fluid works for them like aqua aerobics. So when we've seen a newborn and you've tried to unfold the foot or unfold an arm to put them into their clothes, you can feel all of that tension because they're muscly. They've actually managed to build muscles inside of you, inside of a bag of fluids. Wow. So this is what this baby has done. In its waking cycle, builds muscles, goes to sleep, recovers. So it's literally spending half of its life asleep inside of you. And what's that baby sitting in? Amniotic fluid. That's that baby's amniotic fluid. It's the baby cells. And what does it do with the amniotic fluid? It keeps his skin supple. So the baby's covered in lanugo, which is like a fine hair, and vernix, which is like an emollient. So it doesn't prune being in water for 10 months. So it's got those things, and it also helps the baby to keep warm, keeps heat trapped against the skin for those 10 months. So that amniotic fluid around it, guess what it does? It drinks the amniotic fluid in. You might have some skin cells off the baby's skin in there, some hair that's gone into the amniotic fluid. The baby drinks it all in, keeps the solids, and excretes the liquid part as urine. So it's basically sitting in its own urine. Weak wee. And it has its own peculiar little tiny amount of bacteria in there. It's not completely sterile, but it's enough to keep that baby going. So all of that is happening inside of you. The solid matter is what you see appear outside the baby when they excrete their meconium. That's what the solid matter becomes, meconium. This is all happening inside of you. The excretion of meconium only happens towards the end of the pregnancy, but they're peeing all the way through. Peeing all the way through. Swallowing and peeing. They're finding their thumbs, sucking them. Between 14 and 16 weeks, they become a girl or a boy or indeterminate, or both. Yeah. So that all happens around 14, 16 weeks. All of this happens. There's nobody going in there. Nobody's calling you in and saying, all right, let me just open the flap on your uterus and see what we can do today. No, you do all of this. You know, sometimes we freak out if there's, I've never seen an extra digit, but sometimes babies are born with an extra digit and people freak out about it. You kind of think, can you see what we've just pulled off? The magnificence of what you're able to create inside of you. People worry about those little cosmetic things. My second son's got odd ears. It's like one of them's his dad's ear and one of them's my ear. You know, no one notices because they're not looking at both ears at the same time. But of course, when you're examining your baby, you know every little inch of them, every millimeter. We're not symmetric either. When we're formed, you know, I was talking about them being formed, we're formed in two halves, given away by this bit. Yeah, you can tell. Formed by two halves, we're not symmetrical even, but we just look at it. This is so magnificent. This is so magnificent what you're able to achieve. So now, expelling your baby. You've got the uterus holding the baby in, you've got a cervix, the neck of the uterus, which has got, you can see that it's kind of pointing towards your back passage. It's posterior. And so that's to keep everything in, that's to keep your baby in. And then when it's time for your baby to let go, your baby sends a protein that enters its own bloodstream, that then crosses over the placenta to your bloodstream and then circulates, and then your body goes, oh, okay, and it gets ready. So the estrogen that is being produced, it gets higher and higher, and progesterone gets higher and higher throughout the pregnancy. The progesterone keeps your uterus all quiet, quiescent they call it. It keeps it quiet so it doesn't excrete your baby, doesn't contract your baby out before the baby's ready. But when the baby sends a signal, then progesterone has to dip in order for your uterus to contract to let the baby out. And estrogen dips as well, but whilst it's dipping, it helps synthesize prostaglandin. And prostaglandin is the hormone that impregnates your cervix and is also present in semen, that ripens your cervix. So it makes your cervix nice and ripe, juicy, ready to go. When you see that happening, you've got an opportunity to make your final preparations. So you'll find there's more discharge. You might even find a bit of mucus plug being shed, and it's mucousy, and sometimes it's red, sometimes it's brown, Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's cream, white. But when you start to shed that, then you can just do your final bits, like, is everyone in place? Where are my midwives? You know, where's my partner? You know, you can start to do all those checks. Sometimes people start to get those signs of readiness weeks in advance. And for many people, particularly second and subsequent babies, you only see the signs the day before. Yeah. But there are signs and your body responds to them, and it grows more. Oxytocin receptors get grown. If you've been producing colostrum, sometimes you produce a bit more. Colostrum is like a yellowy, crystally excretion from your nipples, which feeds the baby for a few days before the milk comes in. So there again, all those adaptations for you is like, get ready to let the baby go. So your breasts respond to that. Your lung capacity responds to that. Sometimes your lung capacity really has a boost, often just before you're about to have a baby. That you've got more lung capacity for when you're having your baby, when you're trying to breathe through that work. Often the other thing that happens is your blood pressure reduces, because the turgidity of your blood vessels reduces, because progesterone is reduced to make sure that everything can happen as it should, to make sure that your uterus can contract, but also your blood pressure kind of returns to normal. Some maternity workers don't understand that signal because they may not be continuity of care workers. So they might see your blood pressure rising and say, oh, there's a problem, but actually that's just an adaptation for you to be able to labour and birth. So all of those things are happening. So it kind of reverses everything. So before, your body is like, the sign is to keep everything in no matter what. And then the baby signal makes your body say, okay, it's time to let go. It's time to let go. You do that. You do it. It's what you do. So you start also to have, you might have been having something called Braxton Hicks, but you start to feel some cramping or some period type pains or tightenings. And sometimes it happens more at night. And that will be because oxytocin works better at night. Sometimes you have it happening at night and then you'll get up in the day and you'll be fine. There'll be no surges and you'll be sometimes disappointed. Oh, I was going to go into labour. Then it happens again, then it happens again. Some people have it happening for weeks. But sometimes it's just a few days, and then you're feeling all the sensations are gone, and then you're waiting for it going, and then you're waiting for it to stop, and then it doesn't. It suddenly becomes more regular, the contractions. So you've got the pituitary gland producing oxytocin, and you've got your body responding to it, just like it does when you're having an orgasm. You can feel your vagina pulsing, breasts throbbing. Yeah, that's what oxytocin does. So the oxytocin is enabling all of this amazingness to happen, and the contractions or surges start to get closer and closer together and productive. And then you start to feel the weight of something coming down, just like with a poo. When you're having a poo, you kind of know when you're ready. You might say, oh gosh, yeah, when I get home, I'm going to have a poo. And then you might get home and then you're distracted by a few letters. You go and put the kettle on, you have a chat with your pets or your children. And then it comes back. It says, no, now you better get to the loo. And then you go with all those sensations and you expel your poo. And it's the same with your child. It's the same bundle of nerves, in fact, that facilitates pushing, called the Ferguson's reflex. So your body's gone from holding everything in to really going like the clappers to let your baby out. And that can be disturbed by bright lights, unusual conversations or conversations at all, being too cold, being in too much pain. That can all disturb the flow of labour. But also, I just want you to remember that discomfort can also assist the flow of labour, because with discomfort, you'll end up finding your comfort, moving around a bit, moving around, wiggling around, and all of that is really beneficial for the baby. So all of that is happening. your whole body is like an orchestra, working with your baby's swiveling its head on the cervix, or stretching, or waggling its feet at the fundus, which is the top of your uterus. All of that, you're working together, and then you come to the point where you're feeling like, I feel really heavy and I really need to push. You shouldn't have to say it, and no one should say it to you, but your cadence of your labor and birth just changes. Often you'll end up with shorter contractions, slightly more spaced apart. And that's because your baby's unfolding the vagina now. And as your baby's unfolding the vagina, it's being really squeezed. And so there's an appreciation that your baby may benefit from longer gaps between the contractions and shorter contractions. And we witness that often. We talked about a rest and, no, I've not mentioned it. There's a rest and be thankful phase that can happen around the time when things transition. And this rest and be thankful phase can sometimes be called transition. So when that's happening, the cervix is almost out of the way, so it's no longer sending the signals to contract. So in the end, it's the vagina unfolding that is leading the contractions. So that's why they're slightly different in nature. The impulse is coming from a different point. And so that happens. And if you're left in peace and you're adopting positions that are comfortable for you, you're going to find that baby descending. You're going to feel more and more weight towards your back passage. And then your anus, will be unfolded. So if you're thinking about your anus right now, you're saying, oh, that puckered little thing. But when the baby is passing by it into the, like it's coming down the vagina and coming to emerge, it will unfold your anus. So it'll look like, looks like soft, pouty lips like that. Looks like, I sometimes say it looks like a pink polo. But that's your baby's head passing there, and it stretches it all out. Just imagine how magnificent you are that you can accommodate that, and then have a puckered anus once your baby's born. It just all tucks back in. You're amazing. And your vagina that's been unfolded by this whole human all tucks away again, all folds back in. That cervix that was stretched all the way out goes back into place. And then you've got that lovely little cervix again for the next time that you menstruate. Just a little hole that's coming through. Not a big hole, all those tucks away. That's what we're capable of. That's what we're capable of. So your baby's coming down and your baby's moving with you, and usually head first, but imagine you can give birth to babies bottom first too. You can do that, okay? Sideways, no. Not arm first, no. It's got to be a longitudinal position. You can do that. Your baby's got an adaptation so that it can deal with situations where there's reduced oxygen. So they only ever have oxygen saturation of 60%, which means that they can cope with reduced oxygen. They're built for it. They only become 100% as like us once they're born. So, you know, I know I infuse about it, but I just want you to understand. And I'm sure there's things that I haven't mentioned, but I just need you to understand how fully enabled you are to excrete a human. And then love that human to the point where you die for that human and give up your breasts and your belly for eternity, it feels like. There'll always be a little person on it, a slightly older person on it. You cuddle your sons when, you know, they didn't win a basketball match. It will be your breast, it will be your neck that will give them comfort after you got them here. So you've got a baby's head that molds. I've talked about the vagina unfolding, but your baby's adaptations include a head that molds. So the skull bones are two side ones, slide over each other, and then the back bones go back a bit. So it actually changes the shape of the head to a cone, which just nicely, that's the best negotiation you're going to get between your vagina and your baby's head, is that cone. And that's how you can let your baby out. You've got, the baby's got an umbilical cord, that's its cells. So clever. It's got jelly in it to stop the two arteries and the vein from getting tangled around each other or squishing each other. That's how clever your baby is. So, and it's coiled, which means that you can never occlude the cord. It will always be throbbing at 140 beats per minute, which is the baby's heartbeat. So it doesn't stay still long enough to form a knot that it can tighten. So even when the baby has a knot in its cord, it's a pulsing knot, it's a loose knot, because the umbilical cord is thick and pulsatile and coiled. That's how clever we are. That's how clever we are. We borrowed the design to make a corded telephone. We borrowed that design. So your baby's head molds to fit your vagina as best a fit as we can manage. And then usually a baby's head is formed first, and the baby's head is, the face is facing the rectum, the anus. So it's not a design fault. That's so that the baby can acquire your gut flora. So when I was talking about your food choices, etc., what your gut flora is impacts the gut flora of your baby. Yeah, so if you've got great gut flora, your baby will have great gut flora. If you've got gut flora that tends you towards allergies, your baby's more likely to have those allergies too. So it's just knowing how magnificent we are, and appreciating that there is things that we can put in place before we're even pregnant that will make a difference. And your gut health is one of them. Yeah. So that the baby acquires your gut by its lips being an inch away from your anus at the point of birth. And it's your open anus too. So your baby gets a good inoculation of microbiota from your own gut. It's fascinating, fascinating. And when your baby's born, so your baby's born with lips near the anus, and then it has to rotate again to fit out of you, because you've got shoulders now to get out. So that involves a doll and a pelvis. You can move around with that. You see how magnificent your body is. And when that baby does that rotation, lines up with its shoulders, the shoulders are born one towards the front of you and one towards the back of you. So they kind of come out of you sideways, because it's the best fit, because you're awesome. So now you can see, when you've got all that shimmying happening, you can now see why having an epidural doesn't facilitate that in as quick a time. It's not as efficient. And that's why often if you have an epidural, particularly if you're a first-time mum, you're more likely to have forceps or cesarean, because the baby really needs you to be uncomfortable and moving around and upright, so that they can work with your muscles in the pelvic floor to get born. So when the baby is born, shimmies out sideways, and you bring your baby to you, there's something called a birth pause that we need to be very aware of. Because sometimes the baby doesn't come to you. You don't want to take your baby straight away. Sometimes you just want to check. What have I got here? How many of you don't look in the toilet when you've had a poo before you flush? I thought so. We like to see what we've expelled. And it's the same with our children. We need that birth pause. And sometimes the woman will look at the baby, then look at the father. It's almost like, yeah, is it yours? Yeah, yeah. Sometimes she just wants to look at that 5 fingers, you know, what are we talking? 1 head? We often feel that reflex to do that. And then we want to welcome our children into our arms. The good thing is whilst we're looking, our babies have stretched out for the first time because they've all been curled up inside of us. So for the first time, they can open their arms. And when they open their arms, they open their chests. And that's the first time their lungs fill with air. Amazing. Amazing. Often they'll come out covered in their vernix or a little bit of vernix. We don't wipe it off. We let it sink into their skin. They need the emollient because now, rather than being in water 24/7, they're now out in air and being touched by clothes and toweled off, etc. So they need that emollient in their skin. Your baby was using 2 heart chambers, but they have a 4-chamber heart, but they weren't using all 4 chambers because they weren't using their lungs, so they didn't need to. Do you see how efficient that design is? They only take the blood through 2 chambers. They've got 60% oxygen saturation inside, because if they had 100%, we'd all be on the floor having to supply them with 100% oxygen. So efficient. When that baby comes into our arms, the burst of oxytocin, unmatched, higher than an orgasm. Often women will forget. They won't even care if they're bleeding. They won't care about their pain if they've got a sore perineum or sore vulva. Doesn't care. Giddy with oxytocin if it's been a physiological birth. If it's been an interrupted with birth, they don't get that high. They don't get that burst, particularly if you've had synthetic oxytocin. You don't get it. But if you've had a physiological birth, woo! Right, and your chest throbs like when you've had, if you're fortunate to be having orgasms, if you ever look down at your chest whilst having an orgasm, it'll be blush, be kind of red, and you'll actually feel the heat pulsing from your chest. And that's the very spot where most women want to place their babies, right there over their pulsing oxytocin hotspot. So the baby goes, and the baby recognizes your smell and hears your voice and feels comforted there, and you're ecstatic and the baby's comforted. That's why we go on and on about the baby coming straight to the mother, to facilitate that, because it corrects their temperature and their breathing. Yeah, so you've got that baby exploring, doing that, and what's happening with their cord, because they have, at any one time, they've got 2/3 of blood. I've just got to plug my computer in. They've got 2/3 of blood in them and 1/3 in their placenta being exchanged for all the nutrients and stem cells and oxygen coming from the mother, and then pushing back the toxins to the mother. So that's happening all the time. And when the baby's born, the baby now is outside, and remember, it was being kept warm and fed constantly inside, but your baby now has to keep itself warm. Obviously working with the mother, has to suck its own food. So it needs that extra blood to complete all of that and keep the brain working. And the lungs were not working before. We now need blood for the lungs. We now need, they weren't using their livers before, because mother was processing everything. Now they need to use their livers. So we now have a situation where that 1/3 of the blood that was in the placenta needs to go to the baby, so they've got the best chance of the best health. So that's called optimal cord care. And you sort all of that because you've got the placenta inside of you being kept warm. So it's keeping the blood fluid, so the blood can keep coming to the baby. The placenta is detached from the uterine wall and is sitting in your uterus or in your vagina ready for expulsion. We give you the quiet, the undisturbed time to complete this, which is made for you. And do you know you don't even have to cut the cord between the baby and their placenta? There's a mechanism. It shrivels and comes away from their own belly buttons around day 4, day 5. That's how efficient and magnificent you are. That's what you grew. That's what your baby's capable of. And so when your baby comes, your baby at first wants to gaze, gaze, gaze. So your baby wants to gaze at you. And then your baby starts smelling something. What's that smell? Familiar smell. Yeah. The smell from your breast smells like amniotic fluid that they've been sat in for how long? So it's like, and then that smell makes their mouths water. So, oh yeah, that'll be nice. So they head for the food. So it's called the breast crawl. And if you're lying and the baby's undisturbed and there's not too much noise going on, your baby will just head up to the boob, and then they've got sufficient strength in their necks to just raise their head back and throw their mouths onto your nipple with their mouths open. But we've seen that in baby lambs, right? Much more us, human mammals. Of course you've got adaptations. Of course it's a reflex. Of course they can crawl. It's a reflex. We are magnificent. And I just wanted to communicate that. This is a big story, what you're able to do, what you're able to facilitate for your children, and what your children are able to do. They have reflexes that enable to do the most wondrous things. Yeah, like we teach them to fill a nappy, but actually there's something called elimination communication, something so clever that babies can do. They can poo in a pot from the moment they're born. It's called EC. Your baby's so clever. The baby can hold its breath underwater, of course. It's got that reflex for another 6 months after they're born. So they can find their own food. And they communicate. Their crying isn't just random, it's communication. I'm cold, I'm bored, cuddle me, feed me. It's not random. You need to listen. You can even, just to step back a bit, you can even play games with your baby in the uterus. You can knock your uterus and they'll knock back. You can teach your baby songs. You can sing songs to your baby, and then your baby will recognize them when they're born. You're capable of so much, and I wanted to share that. And one of the wonderful things to do, we recover and then do it all over again. There are most of the earlier generations in my lineage, and all my grandparents and great grandparents all had 11, 12 children. Some people have 21 children. And imagine they try to convince us in 2022 that three quarters of us have to give birth by cesarean. I don't think so. So it's really good news, and I wanted to share it, and thank you for hearing me. Any questions you've got, I'm here. I could talk about this all day and all night. If nothing, then I'd love to close with some thanks, giving thanks, and breathing and settling of ourselves. Oh, thank you. I can see your comments in the chat. Thank you. And we are magical. We really are magical. And that's why I get emotional when I get a chance to talk about this. My role as a birth keeper is an absolute calling. I couldn't live without sharing the magic of what we're capable of. I just couldn't live without doing that. I think it's conditional. I think my life is conditional on me sharing this message. So I just want you to celebrate who you are, what you're capable of. And even if society isn't ready right now to bow as you walk down the road as if diamonds are at the meeting of your thighs, if they're not ready yet, you celebrate you, and you nourish you, and you put you first. Those of us that are already mothers, We're probably used to putting ourselves last. Change that. Your children benefit from you honouring yourself and who you are. They benefit, they grow from it. They grow from it. They need it, actually. As well as just modelling more martyrdom for them. Martyrdom stroke guilt. We don't want to do that anymore. That's the old way. 2022, we have come into a new age. We don't need martyrs anymore. Yeah. We need you to walk like the goddesses that you are. It's a tall order, I know, because society isn't ready for this, but come on, we're used to tall orders, aren't we? Yeah, we're women. We're women. We can do anything. So, again, hand on heart, hand on womb. And we just give thanks for all that we are and who we are and what we're charged with, what we're capable of, the magnificence that is within us, what we're able to achieve, our capacity to love and grow and serve and nurture and understand. We give thanks for all of these things. Take some deep breaths and just thank yourself for still being here and for growing and for sharing what you learn and for your beautiful arms that nurture and your heart that understands and has deep compassion. Thankful for all that we are.